Now seems like a good time to do a 1 year recap of my solo indie development. It's been a little over a year now, and my internet access is kaput, so I can't do my usual game dev streams. Let's jump into some numbers here. You guys like numbers, right? So, cost of living and general expenses, a little over $30,000. Took my bank account statement from August 2018 and then subtracted my statement from 2019. I believe it was 30,150, something like that. I don't have internet access, so I can't verify that. The statement pretty much matches what I expected. You know, I was looking at around $2,000 to $3,000 of spending a month, and that added up to roughly 30,000. So right on point there. Next year might be a little more expensive. I was not paying for health insurance, and I've got some other costs coming up, like potential roof replacement and dental work. So yeah, that might go up a little next year. Income. I was pleasantly surprised from Twitch, either from ad revenue or bits or donations. Well, some stuff outside of Twitch too. So all of that stuff added together is $1,641. And I also took on some contract work, doing some pixel art animation. So that was $843. Total $2,484, which definitely more than I expected. I really appreciate all of the financial support you guys have been giving me. That's pretty awesome. Kind of at a loss for words here, but thank you so much. That is unfortunately not enough to sustain my living expenses, but it definitely goes to helping extend the runway. Yeah, I guess we're about 1/10 of the way there. Yeah, cool. So those are the numbers. Maybe the next question you guys have is, why did I go indie? So I was working in AAA, and then I went to a smaller studio, Bosky Productions, which I guess you would call like AA. And unfortunately, Lawbreakers was not the type of game that people wanted. And, well, some people wanted it. I wanted it. But arena shooter style games just are not taking off. And then the studio ended up shutting down because obviously we didn't make enough money to stay up. And I felt like I couldn't go back. Or, I mean, I could, but I just didn't want to go back to the big studios, the big AAA studios. There's so many people working on the projects. You know, you've heard the old cog in the machine analogy, and sometimes it's not even a full cog. Sometimes you're just like one tooth on one cog in the whole machine, because you've got a whole team of people dedicated to one specific area of development. And if you like doing one specific thing, then AAA might be for you. If you like doing hard surface modeling day in and day out every day, then that's great. I like to change things up. I like to do different stuff. I don't like to just program. I like to do art stuff too. So there's not a lot of room for that in the big studios. They want people to focus on the thing that they excel at, because that is the most optimal strategy. And it makes sense. It's just not ideal for me. So I decided to start a new chapter and see what it would be like to try to make a game just by myself. So created Lone Wolf Studio LLC, just me, and started working on a game. So I guess the next topic to cover is self-discipline. If I'm going to be working on something just me, a big concern is, can I stay focused well enough to actually make consistent progress? And I think the thing that I did that was most effective for that is to stream the whole development process. So every weeknight, I'm streaming, and that keeps me kind of in the zone of working on specific things that I need to work on for that day. So it may not be for everybody. I don't know if I would recommend it for everybody. It can be distracting. It can be potentially demoralizing because it's really difficult to get viewers. So you might be trying to stream your development. You might be showing something really cool, and there may not be anybody watching, or maybe just one or two people. So it can be kind of disheartening at times. But fortunately, I've been slowly building up a viewer base, and got around close to 20 people average now. So that's pretty awesome. And having those people just watching me keeps me from going off and doing other things. Like I might start watching a tutorial, and then 4 hours later, I'm like, what happened? You click on the related videos, and next thing you know, it's super late and you got to go to bed. But if I'm streaming, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on what needs to be done. I've got a little more pressure. People are watching me. I sit and work through problems that I might otherwise give up on, and it just helps keep me on topic. So, let's see. Expectations versus reality. You kind of go into this indie thing with a grass is greener vision, being like, okay, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to be in charge of everything. I can do all these things. I can knock out a game super quickly. I'm not going to make all the mistakes that I've seen happen in bigger studios. Is that the reality? Not so much. So the big thing is time expectations. I've been in the industry for 10 years, so at least I have a better idea than most people as to how long it's going to take to make a video game. There's still a lot of unknowns as far as how long it's going to take me to make a video game, because I know the programming stuff, animations, 3D assets, a lot of that stuff, I have no idea how long it's going to take. So I was hoping I could finish a game in 2 years. Probably not going to make that deadline, but it wasn't, a hard set date that I had to meet, fortunately. At least I wasn't naive enough to think that I could finish something in like less than 1 year. But it's going to take a little while. I feel like I've been sitting at about 20% for months. Like, it's almost like I'm at a fixed point in a timeline, and the start is moving back, and the finish is moving back, and the timeline is just getting longer and longer, and I'm staying here. But I am making progress, so that's definitely a lot better than treading water. It's just there's a lot of stuff to do. So, as far as the indie dream, there's definitely some great parts to it. Like, I've got full creative freedom. I can do whatever I want. I can talk to anybody about it. I don't have NDAs or anything like that. So, like I said, I've been streaming the whole thing. The downside is that at the end of the day, you still have to churn out a bunch of content. There's just a lot of sometimes very tedious work that just needs to be done. It's not exciting. And, sometimes I'm sitting there working on my 200th mesh thinking, man, I could be like at a studio doing the same stuff and getting real money right now and not have to worry about the game being successful to even get paid. But I hope it's all going to be worthwhile in the end. Like, I've got some cool visions for where I want the game to go, And if I can make that a reality, I think it's going to be a really awesome project. And a lot of this is not me making a game as a source of revenue, it's me making a game as a piece of art. And I want to make all of the pieces fit together in one cohesive vision. And yeah, so I'm hoping that's going to be a reality someday. On the plus side, though, since I'm doing everything, I get a chance to shift around a lot. So one thing I do is randomly select a task to work on every day, and that constantly shifts me around and forces me to work on different aspects of the game development. I think one thing that is a big danger for solo developers, or just developers in general, when they're in charge of their own tasks, is they get tunnel vision, focus on the one thing that they really want to get right. Meanwhile, there's all this other stuff that needs to be done. So if you force yourself to work on a whole bunch of different things every day, then it kind of builds up the game in a broader sense, and you can get an idea for how all the pieces start to fit together. One thing that can happen is if you focus on one thing, try to get it up to 100%, and then focus on another thing, inevitably that other thing is going to impact that first thing, which is going to need to be changed. So you need to have a very iterative process, and that's one thing I've tried to do is imagine that any piece I do is going to need to be done and redone like 3 times. That's one thing I've learned in AAA game dev, is that stuff gets done and then it gets redone and then it gets redone again. Like, don't get too attached or try to focus on getting one thing to 100%. Just get it in, get it functional, move on, come back, iterate later. So I think I've been doing an okay job of that. So I'm constantly bouncing around between sound, animation, music, effects, programming. Like, all these things kind of interact with each other. One example of that is the music. I've been working on a level and had some lasers that turned on and turned off at a set rate. And, you have to move through the lasers. They'll probably not be lasers at the end, but that's just a temporary asset. Kind of classic platformer stuff. And then I put music in and realized timing the lasers was out of sync with the music. So then I had to readjust the level and make all that stuff sync. And, if you try to make everything 100%, then going back and making those changes is a lot more painful. Yeah, that's just one example. All that stuff interacts together. So constantly shift around and try to at least get a first pass of things in there, just so you can see how everything works together, as opposed to build everything up and then build some other thing up and then realize that they don't mesh. It's a lot easier if things are in first pass and you're going to iterate on them anyway, to go ahead and make changes to fix things and make it all work together. Let's take a look at the progress of the game. This is the game maybe a month, not even a month, I don't think. The first export I have of it very early on in development. You can see I have the starting of a character, no hair here, some blocking of levels and some fog just to kind of get an idea of the game. So I've got a very bad run animation, but got some of the basics of character movement in here. I've got some ramp jumping, and yeah, I mean, it's a platformer. Got some of that Quake style movement going on here, and you can see the fog. The Godot fog is accurate in that it is from the camera, but what I wanted was something that was more directly in the depth axis so that everything that was playable would be black. Right now it kind of looks like this weird black spotlight that's following the character around with the curve of the colors. But at least it gave me an idea of the aesthetic of the game. Let's take a look at something a little more recent. Here I've got some custom shaders for the fog. Character has hair, early procedural animation prototype of that. And I've got a fist, which I didn't concept it. It looks weird. Doesn't look great. But it's functional. You can run around and punch. It provides platforming capabilities as well as combat. And let's look at something more recent. This is the game as it currently stands. You can see the character's got better procedural hair animation, better run animation. Things look a little smoother. Got a lot more detail in the environment. And it's kind of hard to show, but overall the controls feel a lot better. There's a lot of little mechanics, like you can slide down slopes to build up momentum, and just a lot of stuff that is feel and not see. Also have some polished like transitions and such. And let's take a look at the fist. So you can see it was pretty rough before. Now it's more like a mechanical robot arm with cool little glowy bits and such. And also I've added a whole lot of mechanics in the game, like being able to hang and jump off of walls. And even later in the game you'll get this nice little grapple. So lots of fun stuff to do. But the purpose of this video is more about the journey that I've taken in solo game dev, and not so much about the progress of the game itself. I'll probably do another recap video for that, or you can just tune into my game development streams whenever my internet comes back up. So yeah, let's get back to general game dev stuff, the indie life. So let's look at the future. At the moment, I currently have enough money still in savings that I'm going to continue as usual. I don't have any plans to seek funding immediately. I don't really want the pressure of publishers or backers to force me to change my vision of the game, and I don't want Kickstarters to be stuck waiting like 4 years for a product if it ends up taking that long. Once the game's closer to completion, maybe we'll see about that. It'll be probably easier to get some backing if I've got a more polished product to show, if I ever decide to go that route. I don't know for sure what I'm going to end up doing. At some point, I'm going to have to ship the game or get money or get a job. Like, a real job. But speaking of money, let's look at how many sales I will need to make to actually fund myself. So say I price the game at a number that is going to make me personally $10 a copy. That means it's going to have to be $15 to $20 a copy once you take the cuts out for platforms and maybe publishers and taxes and all that stuff. You almost have to sell a game for twice what you actually want to make. Keep in mind, this is not a promise for the price of the game. This is just hypothetical, easy numbers. If things go well, and I finish the game within 2 years, that's probably going to cost me about $100,000 just for basic expenses. And that means I'd have to sell 10,000 copies of the game. It may not sound like a lot when you put things in perspective of the big AAA games that sell millions of copies, but realistically, so many games out there fail to sell even in the triple digits. Like, if I look at my follower count and I've got like 2 or 3 thousand people following me, and let's be generous and say 10% of those people actually decide to buy a copy of the game, that's like 200 copies. So I have to find another way to sell 9,800 copies of the game. And that's just breaking even, not really making a profit. That's just to cover my expenses during the development time. And chances are to sell that extra 9,000 copies. What, 9,000? I'd have to put some money into marketing, and then that ups the number of copies I have to sell. Maybe I have to sell like 20,000 copies. And if I don't finish in a couple years, or I have some other big expenses, now what, I have to sell like 40,000 copies? So making profits off a video game is very difficult. Probably the most difficult part of game development. I think a publisher at GDC was saying that 97% of game development studios fail to turn a profit and sell more than one game. Like, successful games are the exception and not the rule. I'm not 100% sure on that statistic. Like I said, my internet's down. I can't verify that, but it's the vast majority, for sure. Most games are not profitable. So I'll definitely have to put some focus into ramping up the marketing toward the end of the project. I really hate that we're kind of out of this, like, build a good game and people will buy it era. That's just not what it is anymore. There's so many games out there that it is very difficult to stand out and get on people's radar. And it's kind of crazy the amount of work indies do just for like some hope of maybe making minimum wage. We do game development because we love it, not because we're trying to get rich. So best case, I'll actually sell enough copies that I can work on an even more ambitious game. Worst case, the sun consumes the earth and we all die.